The transit hub of Nexus 17 was always crowded. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds passed through every hour. They walked, crawled, floated, and slithered across the wide metal floors. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and the strange mix of alien bodies. Lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in pale blue. Sat alone on a long bench near the assignment boards. The bench could hold 20 beings, but all 19 other seats were empty. She was used to this. Around her, the crowd moved like water around a stone. No one looked at her directly. No one came close. When someone walked near her bench by accident, they would suddenly change direction. Their faces would twist with discomfort. Some would hold their chests as if something hurt inside. Pulled her thin arms closer to her body. She made herself smaller. She had learned to do this many years ago. If she was small enough, maybe they would forget she existed. Maybe they would stop looking at her with those eyes full of fear and disgust. She was I. That was enough reason for the galaxy to hate her. The I were not dangerous. They had no claws, no poison, no weapons built into their bodies. They were thin and pale with large, dark eyes and soft gray skin. They looked fragile. They were fragile. But they carried something the galaxy could not forgive. They carried feeling. Every eye was born with an empathic field. It was not something they controlled. It was like breathing. Their emotions flowed outward, touching everyone nearby. When an eye was happy, others felt warmth. When an eye was afraid, others felt cold. And when an eye was sad, truly, deeply sad, others felt that sadness enter their hearts like a knife. Had been sad for a very long time. She had lost her family when she was young. Her had cast her out because her grief was too strong, too painful for others to bear. She had wandered from station to station, taking small jobs, sleeping in corners, always alone. The sadness inside her had grown roots. It had become part of her, like her bones, like her blood. And everyone who came near her felt it. She did not mean to hurt them. She did not want to share her pain, but she could not stop it. The grief leaked out of her like light from a cracked lamp. It touched strangers and made them remember their own losses. It made them feel things they had buried long ago. They hated her for it. So she sat alone, waiting for her shift assignment. She worked as a cargo handler in the lower docks. It was hard work, lifting heavy boxes in cold storage rooms where no one else wanted to go. But at least there she was alone. At least there she did not have to see the way others looked at her. The assignment board flickered. Names and numbers scrolled across the screen, watched and waited for her designation to appear. Around her, the crowd continued to flow. A group of traders laughed loudly at some joke. A family of small furry beings hurried past, their children clinging to their parents. Two tall, insect-like creatures clicked their mandibles in conversation. None of them looked at her. None of them came near. Was invisible. She was a ghost sitting in plain sight. Then she felt something change. It was small at first, a shift in the movement of the crowd. Someone was walking toward her bench. She kept her eyes down, expecting them to turn away like all the others. But they did not turn away. Footsteps approached, steady, calm. They stopped right beside her. Looked up. A human stood there. He was not very tall, with black hair cut short and a face that looked tired but kind. He wore a pilot's jacket, old and worn at the edges. His eyes were dark brown and they looked at her without fear. He was looking for a seat. His heart began to beat faster. She wanted to warn him. She wanted to tell him to go away, to find another place, to save himself from the pain she would cause him. But her voice would not come. The human looked at the empty seat beside her. Then he looked at her face. He seemed to think for a moment. Then he sat down. He sat down softly, carefully, as if he did not want to disturb her. He settled into the seat and pulled out a small from his jacket. He began to read. Stared at him. She could feel her empathic field reaching out, touching him. She could feel her grief flowing toward him like cold water. Any moment now he would feel it. Any moment now he would stand up and leave. His face would twist with pain. He would look at her with hatred and walk away. She waited. 1 minute passed, then 2. The human kept reading. His face did not change. His body did not tense. He sat beside her as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Did not understand. She looked at him more carefully. He was definitely human. She had seen humans before, though not many. They were a young species, new to the galactic community. They came from a small blue planet far away. They were known for being curious, stubborn, and strangely adaptable. But she had never heard that they were immune to empathy. Maybe he had not noticed yet. Maybe it took time for humans to feel things. More minutes passed. The human turned a page on his. He scratched his nose. He shifted slightly in his seat to get more comfortable. He did not leave. Finally, could not bear the silence anymore. "You should move," she said. Her voice was rough from lack of use. "I am I." The human looked up from his. He studied her face for a moment. There was no surprise in his eyes, no confusion. "I know," he said. His voice was calm and warm. "You looked like you could use some company." Felt something crack inside her chest. It was a strange feeling, not pain, something else. Something she had not felt in so long that she had forgotten its name. "You will feel my sadness," she said. "It will hurt you." The human tilted his head slightly. He seemed to consider her words seriously. "I feel it," he said. "It's heavy, like carrying a stone in my chest." His eyes widened. "Then why do you stay?" The human smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and sad. "Because everyone carries stones," he said. "Some people just hide them better than others. Doesn't mean we have to carry them alone." Before could respond, a voice echoed through the transit hub. It announced a ship departure from Bay 14. The human glanced up at the speakers, then back at her. "That's my ship," he said. He stood up slowly and put his back in his jacket. Then he looked at her one more time. "My name is Park," he said. "I fly a cargo ship called the Quiet Dawn. If you ever want work off this station, come find me. We always need good hands." He nodded politely. Then he turned and walked away into the crowd. Watched him go until she could not see him anymore. Then she looked at the empty seat beside her. It was just a seat, metal and plastic, same as all the others. But for a few minutes, someone had chosen to sit there. Someone had felt her pain and stayed anyway. Sat alone again, but something inside her had changed. A tiny crack had appeared in the wall she had built around her heart. And through that crack, a small light was beginning to shine. Days passed after the human sat beside her, returned to her work in the cold storage docks. She lifted boxes. She sorted cargo. She ate alone in dark corners and slept in her small room that was barely bigger than a closet. But she could not forget Park. She thought about him during her long shifts. She thought about him when she lay awake at night, staring at the metal ceiling above her bed. She replayed their short conversation again and again in her mind. He had felt her sadness. He had said so himself. He had felt the heavy stone of her grief pressing against his chest. And he had stayed. Why? The question would not leave her alone. Why would anyone choose to feel pain when they could simply walk away? Did not understand humans. She had heard stories about them, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories. Humans were young and foolish, people said. They rushed into danger without thinking. They made friends with species that others avoided. They laughed in the face of death and cried over small animals. They were strange creatures, emotional and unpredictable. But had always thought those were just stories, exaggerations. Surely no species could really be so reckless with their hearts. Now she was not so sure. 2 weeks after their meeting, was called to Doc's supervisor's office. Was a species with 6 limbs and pale scales that shimmered under the station lights. He sat behind a metal desk covered with an old coffee cups. Did not like. He had never hidden his disgust. When she entered his office, he did not look up from his work. "Your transfer request has been," he said. His voice was flat and cold. "Budget cuts. You will remain at Nexus 17. Felt her heart sink. She had applied to transfer to a remote mining outpost months ago. It was a lonely place far from civilization, but she had hoped to find peace there, away from crowds, away from the hatred in people's eyes. "For how long?" she asked quietly. "Indefinitely," finally looked up. His eyes were yellow and narrow. "Is there a problem?" Wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. But she had learned long ago that showing emotion only made things worse. "No," she said, "no problem." Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Good, now get out. You have cargo to move in Sector 7. The temperature regulators are broken there, so dress warm, or don't. I don't care." Left his office without another word. She walked through the station corridors in a daze. Her chest felt tight. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. She was trapped here, trapped on this station where everyone hated her, trapped in this life of loneliness and cold. She thought about giving up. She had thought about it many times before. What was the point of living when every day was the same, when every face she saw turned away in disgust, when even the stars seemed to look down at her with cold indifference? Then she remembered words. "If you ever want work off this station, come find me." It was probably an empty offer. Humans said things like that all the time, she had heard. They made promises they did not keep. They smiled and nodded, and then forgot you existed the moment they walked away. But what if this human was different? What if he had meant it? Stood in the middle of a busy corridor, beings flowing around her like she was a rock in a river. She thought about her options. She could go to Sector 7 and freeze while moving cargo. She could go back to her room and stare at the ceiling. She could keep living this half-life until her heart finally gave out. Or she could find Bay 14. She took a deep breath, then she started walking. It took her almost an hour to reach the docking bays. Bay 14 was in the older section of the station, where the lights flickered and the floors were stained with decades of spilled fuel. She had never been to this part of Nexus 17 before. She found the Quiet Dawn sitting in its assigned slot. It was a medium-sized cargo ship, not pretty but solid-looking. The hull was from years of travel. The paint was faded, but the ship looked clean and well cared for, like an old tool that had been used hard but treated with respect. The loading ramp was down. Stood at the bottom, looking up into the darkness of the cargo hold. She almost turned back. This was foolish. The human had probably forgotten all about her. He had probably been polite just to be polite. Humans did that, didn't they? Said nice things they didn't mean. A voice called out from inside the ship. "Hello, someone there." A woman appeared at the top of the ramp. She was human too, shorter than, with messy brown hair tied back in a loose knot. She wore work clothes covered in grease stains. Her hands were dirty from some mechanical task. The woman saw and stopped. Her eyes moved over his gray skin, her thin arms, her large dark eyes. Recognition flickered across her face. "Your eye," she said. It was not a question. Prepared herself for rejection. "Yes, I will leave if—" "No, no," the woman waved her hand. "Don't go, I'm Bora, I'm the engineer here. Are you looking for someone?" Hesitated. "The pilot, Park," he said. "He said I could find work here." Bora's face broke into a wide smile. "Oh, you're the one from the transit hub, told me about you. He said you might come by." She walked down the ramp, wiping her hands on her pants. Come in, come in. He's in the cockpit running system checks." "Did not move. You are not afraid of me." Bora stopped and looked at her, really looked at her the way he had. There was no fear in her eyes, no disgust, only curiosity and something warm. "Should I be?" Bora asked. "Most people are. My empathy, my emotions, they hurt others." Bora nodded slowly. "Mention that." He said it felt like carrying something heavy when he sat next to you. She tilted her head. But here's the thing. Humans carry heavy things all the time. We're kind of used to it. She reached out her hand. It was still dirty from grease, but she offered it anyway. We have a saying back on Earth, Bora said. Everyone's carrying something heavy. Doesn't mean we can't walk beside them. Stared at the offered hand. In all her years of wandering, no one had ever offered her a hand. No one had ever invited her in. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took it. Bora's skin was warm. Her grip was firm but gentle. And when sympathetic field touched her, when the sadness flowed between them, Bora simply squeezed her hand a little. It's okay, Bora said softly. I can feel it, but it's okay. Come meet the captain. She led up the ramp and into the ship. The inside of the Quiet Dawn was simple but comfortable. The walls were metal, but someone had hung pictures on them. There were plants in small pots, green and alive. The air smelled like machine oil and something cooking in the galley. It smelled like a home. Bora led her to the cockpit at the front of the ship, sat in the pilot's chair, running his fingers over a control panel. When he heard them approach, he turned around. His eyes met. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then smiled. It was the same small, gentle smile she remembered. You came, he said. I came, replied. Her voice trembled slightly. I did not know where else to go. Stood up, he walked toward her slowly, giving her space, not rushing. You don't need anywhere else to go, he said. This is where you belong now, if you want it. Felt tears building behind her eyes. She fought them back. Why are you doing this? You don't know me, you owe me nothing. Was quiet for a moment, then he spoke. When I was young, my mother died. I was alone for a long time. People avoided me because my sadness made them uncomfortable. He paused. Then someone sat beside me, a stranger. She didn't say anything. She just sat with me until the sun went down. He looked at with eyes full of understanding. Sometimes that's all we need, someone to sit beside us. Could not hold back the tears anymore. They fell down her gray cheeks, warm and silent. But for the first time in years, they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of hope, moved into the quiet dawn on a cold morning when the station's heating systems were broken again. She brought everything she owned in a single small bag. It was not much. Some clothes, a broken piece of jewelry from her mother, a blanket that had lost its softness years ago. Bora met her at the loading ramp with a cup of something hot and sweet. Tea, Bora explained. From Earth. It's what humans drink when things are hard, or when things are good, or when we just want something warm to hold. Wrapped her thin fingers around the cup. The heat spread through her hands and up her arms. She had not held anything warm in a very long time. Thank you, she said quietly. Bora led her through the ship to a small cabin near the engine room. It was not big, but it had a bed with clean sheets, a small desk, and a window that looked out into space. Someone had placed a green plant on the desk. Its leaves were small and round. Said to give you this room, Bora said. The window gets good light when we're near stars, and the engine noise is soft here, kind of like a heartbeat. Touched the edge of the bed. The sheets were softer than anything she had felt in years. This is mine, she asked. Her voice was small and uncertain. This is yours, Bora smiled. Welcome to the quiet dawn. The first few days were strange. Did not know how to live with other people. She had been alone for so long that the presence of others felt like a dream that might end at any moment. She waited for the kindness to stop. She waited for and Bora to realize their mistake, to see her for what she really was, a broken thing that only brought pain. She waited for the cold looks to return, for the whispered words, for the slow slide back into loneliness. But it never came. Taught her the basics of ship work. He showed her how to check the cargo holds, how to read the supply lists, how to secure boxes for transport. He was patient and calm, never raising his voice, never making her feel stupid for not knowing things. When her empathic field touched him, when her sadness flowed into his chest, he simply took a breath and kept working. "It's like a cold wind," he told her once. "I feel it, but I've felt cold winds before. They pass." Bora was different. She talked constantly, filling the silence with stories about her life on Earth. She had grown up near the ocean, she said. She had learned to fix machines from her grandmother, who had been an engineer on the old colony ships. She had joined the Quiet Dawn because she wanted to see the stars up close. "Humans are restless," Bora explained while she showed how to check the engine filters. "We always want to go somewhere new, see something different. It's a sickness, really, but a good kind of sickness." Listened to her stories and felt something strange. She felt interested. She found herself asking questions, wanting to know more about this blue planet called Earth, about oceans and mountains and yellow suns. Bora answered every question with joy. She seemed happy that wanted to know. "Most aliens don't care about Earth," Bora said. "They think it's a small, boring planet with too much water and too many people. But I think it's beautiful. I miss it sometimes." "Do you want to go back?" asked. Bora thought about it. "Someday, but not yet. There's too much out here to see first." The Quiet Dawn left Nexus 17 on a Tuesday. Stood in the cargo hold as the ship lifted off, feeling the gentle vibration of the engines through the floor. Through a small window, she watched the station grow smaller and smaller until it was just a dot of light among the stars. She was leaving. She was actually leaving. A strange feeling rose in her chest. It was not sadness. It was something lighter, something that made her want to take deeper breaths, to stand up, to look forward instead of down. She realized it was hope. Their first job was a simple one. They were delivering medical supplies to a small colony on the edge of settled space. The journey would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks of quiet travel through the empty dark between stars. Fell into a routine. She woke early before the others. She made tea the way Bora had taught her. She checked the cargo holds and marked any problems on her. Then she joined in the cockpit for the morning system check. The cockpit was her favorite place on the ship. It was small and full of controls, but it had a wide window that looked out at the stars. Sat in the pilot's chair most mornings, watching the universe go by, drinking his own cup of tea. He did not talk much, but his silence was not cold. It was comfortable, like a blanket. Found that she could sit beside him without feeling the need to fill the space with words. Sometimes they would talk, told her about his family back on Earth. His sister, who worked as a communications officer and worried about him constantly. His father, who had been a fisherman before the oceans got too warm. His mother, who had died when he was young and left a hole in his heart that never quite healed. "I understand loss," said one morning looking out at the stars. "Everyone does eventually, but humans, we don't run from it, we carry it with us. We let it become part of who we are." Looked at him. "Is that why you can bear my sadness, because you have your own?" Nodded slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe it's because I know that sadness doesn't make you broken, it just makes you real." Felt tears prick at her eyes again. She blinked them away. "My people cast me out because my grief was too strong," she said. "They said I was cursed, that I would never be able to live among others, that I would always be alone." Turned to look at her. His dark eyes were soft. "Your people were wrong," he said simply, "and I'm sorry that no one told you that sooner." 1 week into the journey, something strange began to happen. Bora noticed it first. "The ship feels different," she said at dinner, looking around the small galley where they ate their meals together. "Lighter, warmer, like something changed." Looked at your empathy. Froze. "What about it?" "It's changing, can't you feel it?" She closed her eyes and reached inward to the place where her emotions lived. For years, that place had been filled with nothing but grief. Cold, heavy, endless grief. But now there was something else. a small spark of warmth, glowing in the darkness like a tiny star. "I feel it," she whispered, "but I don't understand." Bora reached across the table and took her hand. "Your empathy shares what you feel, right? Not just sadness, but all emotions." Nodded. Bora smiled. "Well, maybe you're starting to feel something besides sad." That night lay in her bed and stared at the stars through her window. She thought about the small spark inside her. She thought about kindness and Bora's warmth. She thought about the way they looked at her like she was a person, not a curse. For the first time in years, she did not cry herself to sleep. Instead, she fell asleep with a small smile on her face. And in the engine room, Bora hummed a song from Earth while she worked. And in the cockpit, looked at the stars and felt, for just a moment, like everything was going to be okay. The quiet dawn sailed on through the dark, carrying its small crew toward something none of them could name. But all of them could feel it. Something was beginning. The second week of their journey was the quietest had ever known, not quiet in a lonely way, quiet in a peaceful way, like the hush of snow falling on an empty field, like the stillness of water in a deep lake. She learned to breathe again. It happened slowly, without her noticing at first. She would catch herself humming while she worked in the cargo hold. She would feel her heart lift when Bora called her name. She would find herself looking forward to morning tea within the cockpit. Small things, tiny moments, but they added up. Bora took it upon herself to teach about Earth. She pulled up pictures on her and showed them during meals. Mountains covered in white snow, forests thick with green trees, oceans that stretched to the edge of the world, blue and endless. "This is where I grew up," Bora said, pointing to an image of a small house near a rocky shore. "My grandmother's house. You could hear the waves at night. It was like the ocean was singing." "Study the picture. It's beautiful." "It is. Earth is full of beautiful things." Bora swiped to another image, a sunset painted in orange and pink and gold. "This is called twilight, the time between day and night. Humans love it because it's both things at once, light and dark, ending and beginning." Thought about that for a long time. In her third week on the ship, a transmission came through from Earth. "Sister." Took the call in the communications room. Happened to be walking by whence voice filled the small space. "Brother, finally. Do you know how long it takes for signals to reach you out there? I've been worried sick." His voice was calm but warm. "I'm fine, the ship is fine, everything is fine." "You always say that, even when things are not fine." "This time it's true." There was a pause, then his voice changed, became curious. "Wait, is someone there with you? I see someone in the background." Froze. She had not realized she was visible through the communications window. She started to back away, but turned and gestured for her to come closer. "This is," he said, "she's new crew, this is my sister." On the screen, a young human woman with the same dark eyes as leaned forward with excitement. Her hair was longer, tied in a braid, and her face was bright with curiosity. "New crew, you got new crew and didn't tell me." Eyes studied through the screen. "Hello, welcome to the quiet dawn. I hope my brother isn't boring you to death with his silence." Did not know what to say. She was not used to people being happy to see her. "He is not boring," she managed. Laughed. It was a bright, warm sound. "That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said about him. I like you already." They talked for several minutes, asked questions about everything, where came from, what she liked to eat, whether Bora had shown her the engine room yet. She talked fast and smiled often. She reminded of sunlight. When the call ended, looked at with a small smile. "She likes you," he said. "She doesn't know what I am." "She knows. I told her before you came aboard." Turned back to the communications panel. "She said she couldn't wait to meet you." Stood there for a long moment, not knowing what to feel. On her, parents warned their children about the eye. In space, crews refused to let her on their ships. But here was a human, far away on a small blue planet, who had been excited to meet her. The galaxy was strange, humans were stranger, but was beginning to think that maybe strange was not so bad. Later that week, Bora started teaching her about the ship systems, not just cargo work but real engineering, how the engines turned fuel into movement, how the life support kept the air clean and warm, how the navigation computer plotted their course through the stars. "You're smart," Bora said, watching run through a diagnostic check. "You pick things up fast." "I had to learn quickly when I was young," said. "Nobody taught me anything. I had to figure it out myself." Bora's face softened. "Well, you're not alone anymore. Ask me anything. I'll teach you everything I know." And she did. Night after night, they sat in the engine room while Bora explained the 1,000 small systems that kept the ship alive, absorbed it all like dry earth drinking rain. For the first time in her life, she felt useful, not just tolerated, useful. Something else was changing too, her empathic field. The sadness was still there. It would probably always be there, buried deep in her bones. But it was no longer the only thing she felt. Hope had joined it, gratitude, and something else, something warm and gentle that she was afraid to name. Bora felt it first. She said one evening, "When I'm near you now, I don't feel sad, I feel calm, like everything is going to be okay." Looked at her with wide eyes. "Really?" "Really, it's like standing in warm sunlight." Bora smiled. "It's nice." That night, alone in her cabin, wept. But these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of something she had forgotten existed. Relief, joy, the overwhelming feeling of finally being seen. She had spent her whole life believing she was broken, believing that her empathy was a curse that would always push people away, believing that she would die alone, unmourned, forgotten. But the humans had shown her something different. They had shown her that her feelings were not a weakness. They were a gift, a bridge that could connect her to others instead of pushing them away. She just needed to feel something worth sharing. On the last night before they reached the colony, found her in the cockpit, looking out at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling into the pilot's chair beside her. "No, I keep thinking about everything." She turned to look at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really sit beside me that day? In the transit hub, you could have found another seat. You could have avoided me like everyone else." Was quiet for a long moment. He looked out at the stars, his face thoughtful. "I saw you sitting there alone," he said finally, "and I thought about how many times I had sat alone too, how many times I had wished someone would just stay." He turned to look at her. "Humans are not brave because we don't feel fear. We're brave because we feel it and choose to act anyway." He paused. "And we're not kind because we don't feel pain. We're kind because we know what pain feels like, and we don't want others to feel it alone." Felt the tears coming again. She let them fall this time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for sitting beside me." Reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder. His touch was gentle and warm. "Thank you for letting me," he said. They sat together in silence as the ship sailed on through the dark. Outside the window, the stars burned bright and eternal. And for the first time in her life, felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They found the debris field 3 days after leaving the colony. The Quiet Dawn was returning to Nexus 17 with an empty hold and full fuel tanks. Had plotted a faster route through a less traveled sector, hopping to save time. It was a path he had taken before, safe and boring. Until it wasn't. Bora was the first to see it on the sensors. A scattered mess of broken metal and twisted wreckage spread across thousands of kilometers of empty space. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit as the navigation computer adjusted their course. "What is that?" asked, looking at the readings with worry. Leaned forward, his face serious. "Debris field, something big got destroyed here." He studied the sensor data. "Looks recent. The metal hasn't cooled yet." Then the distress signal came through. It was weak, crackling with static, but clear enough to understand. A passenger liner caught in the debris field had been struck by wreckage. They were losing atmosphere. They had wounded aboard. They were calling for help. "Any other ships in range?" Bora asked. "Check the sensors." "No, we're the only ones." The three of them looked at each other. The decision was already made before anyone spoke it. "Plot an intercept course," said, "and get the medical supplies ready." The passenger liner was called the Silver Wind. It was a large ship, meant to carry hundreds of passengers between systems. Now it drifted in the debris field like a wounded animal, its hull torn open in 3 places. Brought the quiet dawn alongside the damaged ship with careful precision. Bora extended the emergency docking tube, sealing it against the liner's airlock. Stood ready with medical kits and emergency blankets. Her heart was pounding. She had never done anything like this before. "Stay calm," told her as they prepared to board. "Just help where you can. We'll get through this together." The inside of the Silver Wind was chaos. Emergency lights painted everything in red. Smoke drifted through the corridors from electrical fires. People were crying, screaming, running in all directions. The air smelled of burning plastic and fear. The ship's captain met them at the airlock. He was like from Nexus 17, with pale scales and 6 limbs. His eyes were wide with panic. "Thank the stars," he breathed when he saw. "We have over 200 passengers. 40 are wounded. We're losing pressure in sections 3 and 4. "We can help," said. "Where do you need us?" The captain started to speak, then stopped. His eyes had fallen on. His face changed. The relief drained away, replaced by something harder, something familiar. "What is that?" he demanded, pointing at. "That's a eye. Get it off my ship." Felt the words like a blow to the chest. She stepped back, her instincts screaming at her to run, to hide, to make herself small again. But stepped forward. "She is my crew," he said. His voice was calm but firm, like iron wrapped in silk. "We all help or we all leave." The captain stared at him. "You don't understand. Those creatures are cursed. They spread misery. My passengers are already suffering." "Your passengers are dying," Bora cut in. "Every second you waste arguing is a second someone could be bleeding out. Do you want our help or not?" The captain looked from to Bora too. His scales rippled with frustration, but he was out of options and he knew it. "Fine," he spat, "but keep that thing away from the passengers." They split up. Bora went to engineering to help seal the hull breaches, headed to the bridge to assist with navigation, was directed to the cargo hold where the wounded had been gathered. She almost refused. The captain's words echoed in her mind. Keep that thing away from the passengers. Maybe it was better if she stayed hidden. Maybe her presence would only make things worse. But then she heard the crying. It was coming from the cargo hold, the sound of children weeping, the sound of beings in pain. Thought about all the times she had been alone and hurting, wishing someone would come. She thought about sitting beside her in the transit hub, choosing her when everyone else turned away. She could not turn away now. She walked into the cargo hold. It was worse than she had imagined. Rows of wounded passengers lay on blankets spread across the floor. Some were unconscious. Some were groaning in pain. Some were sitting up, holding injured limbs, their faces twisted with fear. And everywhere, panic filled the air like smoke. Felt their fear pressing against her. It mixed with her own emotions, swirling together into something overwhelming. For a moment, she wanted to run. Then she made a choice. She closed her eyes and reached inside herself, to the place where her emotions lived, to the small spark of hope and warmth that had grown over the past weeks. She took that warmth and pushed it outward. Her empathic field spread through the cargo hold like sunlight breaking through clouds. It touched the wounded passengers, the crying children, the panicked parents. They felt it, Not sadness, not grief, but something else. Calm, peace, the feeling that everything was going to be okay. The crying faded, the panic eased. People looked around in confusion, wondering why they suddenly felt better. Opened her eyes and got to work. She moved among the wounded, bandaging cuts, holding hands, speaking soft words of comfort. An elderly female of a species she did not know clutched her arm and stared at her with wet eyes. "I felt it," the old one whispered. "I felt peace. For the first time in years I felt peace." Squeezed her hand gently. "You're going to be okay. Help is here." She worked for hours. Her body grew tired, but she did not stop. She held children while their parents were treated for injuries. She sat beside a dying male and projected calm into his final moments, so he passed without fear. She gave everything she had. When it was finally over, when the wounded were stable and the hull was sealed, collapsed against a wall, exhausted, Bora found her there, covered in other people's blood, her eyes heavy with fatigue. "You're amazing," Bora said, sliding down to sit beside her. "Do you know that? You saved people today, really saved them." Shook her head weakly. "I just did what I could." "That's what heroes do." Bora put an arm around her. "That's what we all do." Later, as they prepared to disconnect from the silver wind, the captain approached them at the airlock. He stood in front of, his scales shifting with colors she could not read. He did not apologize. His pride would not let him. But he looked at her, really looked at her the way and Bora did. "My passengers say you helped them," he said slowly. "They say they felt comfort from you." Met his eyes. "I did what any person would do." The captain was silent for a long moment. "Perhaps I was wrong," he said finally, "about your kind." He turned and walked away without another word. It was not an apology, but it was something. As the quiet dawn pulled away from the silver wind, stood in the cockpit with Bora. They watched the damaged liner shrink into the distance, its survivors safe. "You did good today," said quietly. Looked at her hands. They were still shaking from exhaustion. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I didn't know if I could do it." "But you did it anyway," Bora smiled at her. "That's what courage is, not the absence of fear, just the choice to act despite it." Thought about those words as the stars wheeled by outside the window. For years she had believed her empathy was a curse, a weapon that hurt everyone she touched. But today she had used it to heal. Maybe, she thought, she had been wrong all along. Maybe her gift had just been waiting for something good to share. News traveled fast in the galaxy. By the time the quiet dawn reached Nexus 17, everyone had heard about the rescue. The Silver Wind's passengers had been talking. They told anyone who would listen about the small cargo ship that came out of nowhere, about the human crew that worked for hours to save them. And they talked about the Eye, the one who walked among the wounded, the one who brought calm instead of fear, the one whose touch felt like sunlight instead of sorrow. Stepped off the ship onto the station deck and immediately felt the change. People were looking at her, not with disgust or fear but with curiosity. Some even nodded in greeting. A few smiled. She did not know what to do with smiles. But not everyone was happy. Was waiting for her in the docking bay. The dock supervisor stood with his arms crossed, his yellow eyes burning with anger. Around him, a small group of dock workers gathered, drawn by the tension in the air. "So," said, his voice dripping with venom, "the cursed one returns, and now she's a hero, they say." Stopped walking. She felt her heart begin to race, old instincts rising up, telling her to run, to hide, to make herself small. But she was tired of being small. "I did what anyone would do," she said quietly. "Anyone?" Stepped closer, his scales rippling with anger. "You manipulated those passengers. You used your sick abilities to twist their emotions. You tricked them into thinking they were safe." Flinched at his words. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Looked around at the gathering crowd. "This is what the Eye do. They pretend to be victims, but they're the real monsters. They crawl inside your head and make you feel things that aren't real. Some beings in the crowd nodded, others looked uncertain, a few shook their heads. Felt tears building behind her eyes, not from sadness but from frustration. She had spent her whole life being blamed for things she could not control. She had tried so hard to change, to grow, to become something more than her grief. And still it was not enough. "Excuse me." A calm voice cut through the tension. Turned to see walking down the loading ramp, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. "I couldn't help but overhear," said, stopping beside. "You seem to have some strong opinions about my crew member." His eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, human." "She's my crew. Everything that concerns her concerns me." Bora appeared behind, wiping grease from her hands. She said nothing, but she stood shoulder to shoulder with her captain, her message clear. Looked at the three of them, then laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Foolish humans, you don't know what you're defending. The Eye are parasites. They feed on emotions. They cause pain wherever they go." "Have you ever actually spent time with an Eye?" asked. His voice was still calm, almost gentle. "I don't need to. Everyone knows what they are." "Everyone knows," nodded slowly. "But nobody actually knows. Nobody ever gets close enough to find out. They just repeat what they've heard. Stories passed down from people who heard them from other people." He took a step forward. "I sat beside for less than 10 minutes, and I learned more about her than everyone on this station put together. You know what I learned?" Said nothing. "I learned that she's been alone her whole life, not because she wanted to be, but because people like you decided she was dangerous without ever giving her a chance." His voice hardened slightly. "I learned that she carries more pain than most beings could survive, and I learned that she spent years trying to make herself invisible just so she wouldn't bother anyone." He looked around at the crowd. "You call her cursed because she can't hide what she feels, but everyone in this station is carrying grief, fear, loneliness. The only difference is that you hide it. You pretend it doesn't exist, and then you hate her because she reminds you of what you're running from." The crowd was silent. Scales had stopped rippling. His eyes were fixed on, but some of the anger had faded from them. Spoke more softly now. "Humans have a strange history. We spent thousands of years hurting each other because of differences that didn't matter. Skin color, language, which gods we prayed to. We learned, eventually, that the things that divide us are almost always smaller than the things that connect us." He looked at, "Is not a monster. She's a person who has suffered more than most of us can imagine. And instead of becoming bitter, instead of hating the galaxy that rejected her, she walked into a room full of wounded strangers and gave them the only thing she had, peace." He turned back to, "If you want to hate her for that, go ahead. But you should know that your hatred says more about you than it does about her." The doc was completely silent. Stood there, tears streaming down her face. But for once she did not feel shame. She felt seen. She felt defended. She felt loved. A voice rose from the crowd. A tall insect-like being stepped forward. "I was on the Silver Wind," he said. His voice clicked and buzzed, but his words were clear. "My daughter was injured. She was screaming in pain, terrified she was going to die. Then this Eye came and held her hand." He looked at. "My daughter stopped crying. She looked at me and said, 'It's okay, Father. I'm not afraid anymore.' She told me later that she felt like someone was wrapping her in a warm blanket." He turned to face. "Whatever stories you've heard, whatever you think you know, I was there. I saw what this being did. She saved my daughter's mind when the doctors were saving her body." Others in the crowd began to nod. A few more survivors from the Silver Wind stepped forward, sharing their own stories. The old female who had felt peace for the first time in decades. The dying male who had passed without fear. Stood alone. His scales had gone pale. He looked around at the crowd, at the faces that were no longer nodding along with him. He looked at Bora, He said nothing. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the station corridors. When he was gone, Bora let out a long breath. "Well," she said, "that was intense." Wiped her eyes. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was strangely calm. "Thank you," she said too. "You didn't have to do that." Looked at her with those quiet, understanding eyes. "Yes, I did," he said. "That's what crew does, that's what family does." Family. The word hit like a wave. She had not had a family in so long. She had forgotten what the word even meant. But looking at Bora, standing beside her like walls against the storm, she began to remember. Maybe family was not about blood. Maybe it was not about species or shared history. Maybe family was just the people who chose to stand beside you, even when standing hurt. That night sat alone in the observation deck looking out at the stars. She thought about everything that had happened. The rescue, the confrontation, the looks on people's faces when they finally saw her as a person instead of a curse. Found her there, as he always seemed to do. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "Too much in my head," she admitted. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then spoke. "You said something today about humans learning to overcome their differences. Was that true?" Nodded slowly. "True and not true. We learned, but we're still learning. Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes all the time, but I think our greatest strength is that we keep trying. Even when we fail, we get up and try again." Thought about that. "Maybe that's what I need to do," she said. "Keep trying." Smiled. "That's all any of us can do," he said. "Keep trying together." Together. Liked the sound of that word. For the first time in her life, she was not alone. And she never would be again. A year passed like water flowing over stones. The quiet dawn became something of a legend among the frontier stations. People talked about the small cargo ship with the human crew that took jobs nobody else wanted. They talked about the pilot who never raised his voice and the engineer who could fix anything. And they talked about the eye who walked among them without fear. Had changed. She still carried her sadness. It was part of her, woven into her bones, never truly gone, but it no longer defined her. Beside it lived other things now: hope, gratitude, joy. Small lights that burned steady against the dark. Her empathic field had changed too. When she walked through crowded stations, people no longer flinched away. Instead, they often moved closer, drawn by the warmth she projected. Children would smile at her without knowing why. Tired workers would feel their spirits lift as she passed. She was not a curse anymore. She was a blessing in disguise. Had promoted her to secondary pilot 3 months ago. She spent her mornings in the cockpit beside him, learning how to navigate the stars. He was a patient teacher, explaining each system, each control, each decision with quiet care. He never made her feel stupid for asking questions. He never rushed her when she needed time to think. Bora had taught her everything about the engines, could now diagnose most problems before the warning lights even flickered. She liked the work, the way it used her hands and her mind together. She liked the hum of the machines around her, steady and alive. They were her family now, strange and small and imperfect, but hers. Called every few weeks, her bright face filling the communication screen with smiles and questions. She sent them packages from Earth, dried fruits, small books, knitted socks in colors too bright for space. She asked about her favorite foods and remembered her birthday when no one else did. Had learned what it meant to be loved. On a cool morning in what humans called spring, the quiet dawn returned to Nexus 17 for supplies. The station had changed in the past year. There were more humans now, their ships dotting the docking bays like seeds scattered on soil. The old prejudices were not gone, but they were quieter. The galaxy was changing slowly, one small act of kindness at a time. was checking the cargo manifest in Bay 14 when she felt something familiar. A presence, a weight of grief so heavy it made her chest ache. She looked up. A young eye stood at the edge of the docking bay. He was small, barely more than a child by their species standards. His gray skin was pale and thin, his large dark eyes wide with fear. He wore clothes that were torn and dirty, and he held himself the way used to hold herself, arms crossed, shoulders hunched, trying to take up as little space as possible. He was looking at her ship, at the loading ramp that led inside, at the warmth that spilled out into the cold station air. And he was afraid. Put down her and walked toward him. He saw her coming and flinched. His eyes darted around, looking for escape routes, expecting rejection. But he did not run. He was too tired to run. She could feel it in his field, exhaustion so deep it had become part of him. She stopped a few paces away, giving him space. "Hello," she said softly. "I'm." The young eye stared at her. His voice, when it came, was rough from disuse. "Yours like me." "Yes, I'm I too." His eyes filled with confusion. "But you're on that ship, with the humans, they let you stay." "They do more than let me stay. They chose me. They asked me to join them." The young one shook his head, disbelief written across his face. "That's impossible. Humans are. They're aliens. They don't understand. Nobody understands." Felt tears prick at her eyes. She remembered saying the same things once. She remembered believing them with all her broken heart. "I thought that too," she said, "for a very long time, but I was wrong." She took a careful step closer. "What's your name?" The young one hesitated. "That's a good name," smiled gently. "Are you hungry? We have food on the ship and warm beds, and people who won't look away when you walk into a room." His eyes went wide. His hands trembled at his sides. She could feel his hope fighting against his fear, two waves crashing against each other in an endless sea. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why would they help me? I'm cursed. I hurt everyone who comes near me." Reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. She placed her hand on his shoulder, gentle as falling snow. "You're not cursed," she said. "You're just carrying something heavy, and you've been carrying it alone for too long." She turned and gestured toward the ship, toward the open ramp and the light inside. "Come with me. You don't have to be alone anymore." Looked at her hand on his shoulder. He looked at the ship. He looked at her face, searching for the trick, the lie, the moment when kindness would turn to cruelty. He found nothing but warmth. Slowly, carefully, he nodded. Led him up the ramp and into the quiet dawn. Inside, Bora was working on a pipe near the engine room. She looked up when she heard footsteps and saw. Her face softened immediately. "Well, hello there," she said, wiping her hands. "Who's this?" "This is," said. "He needs a place to rest." Bora nodded, understanding without needing more words. "I'll make some tea, the good kind with honey." She disappeared into the galley, humming a song from Earth. Led to the cargo bay where she had sat alone on her first day aboard. There was a bench there, long and metal, with room for many people. She sat down and patted the space beside her. "Sit," she said softly. "You're safe here." Looked at the empty seat. He looked at her. His eyes were wet with tears he was trying not to shed. Then he sat down. His shoulder touched hers. Their empathic fields merged, sadness flowing between them like shared water. But there was something else now, something stronger, hope, rising like dawn after a long night. Footsteps approached, appeared in the doorway, drawn by the presence of something new. He looked at the way they sat together, two broken things finding each other in the vast dark of the galaxy. He smiled. It was a small smile, gentle and knowing, the same smile he had given on the day they met. "Welcome aboard," he said to. "Stay as long as you need." Then he turned and walked toward the cockpit, leaving them alone. Looked at, wonder in his eyes. "Is it always like this?" he asked, with humans. Thought about everything she had learned in the past year, about sitting beside strangers, about carrying stones together, about choosing kindness even when it hurt. Yes, she said, it is. She reached out and took his hand. It was thin and cold like hers had been once, but it was alive, it was real. The galaxy told us we were cursed, she said, that we would always be alone, but the galaxy was wrong. We just needed to find the right people, people who would sit beside us and stay. She looked out the cargo bay window at the stars. Humans are strange. They feel everything we feel, fear, pain, loneliness, but they don't run from it. They run toward it. They reach out their hands to people the galaxy has abandoned and say, "Come with me. You're not alone." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I want to believe that." Squeezed his hand. "Then believe it, that's all it takes. One small choice, one moment of trust." Outside, the station hummed with activity. Ships came and went. Beings of 100 species walked past, each carrying their own invisible burdens. But inside the quiet dawn, two eyes sat together, their hands intertwined. And in the cockpit began the startup sequence, preparing to carry his small crew back out into the stars. The engines hummed to life. The ship lifted gently from the deck. And as they sailed out into the endless dark, realized something. The humans had given her more than a home. They had given her a purpose. To find the lost ones, to sit beside them, to show them what she had been shown. That in all the vast, cold, uncaring universe, there were still those who would choose kindness. Still those who would see beyond the fear. Still those who would sit down softly beside the abandoned and the broken. And stay. The stars wheeled by, bright and eternal. The quiet dawn flew on. And no one on board was alone anymore.